Commander Jake Morrison watched the flames eat another human ship. The U's Liberty hung in space like a metal coffin, while the Zephyrian Empire's destroyers moved away from their kill. 300 souls had been aboard that colony transport. Now they were dust and memories floating in the black. Jake's hands shook as he gripped the command chair. The Empire had hit New Kansas again, the third time this year. The farming world could barely defend itself against pirates, let alone a full Empire battle group. Men, women, and children who had done nothing wrong except try to grow food on a distant world were now gone forever. Admiral Lisa Kane's face filled the main screen from Earth Command. Her usually calm expression showed cracks of barely controlled rage. The woman had lost her own daughter in an Empire raid 2 months ago. Every attack since then felt personal to her. "That makes 17 colonies this month, Jake," Lisa said through gritted teeth. "The Empire says we're expanding too fast. Into their space. They want us to stop building new worlds and stick to the systems they allow us to have." Jake wanted to punch something. The space around New Kansas had been empty when humans first found it 20 years back. No ships, no stations, no signs anyone had ever been there. The Empire only claimed it after humans had spent decades terraforming the barren rock into something that could grow crops. "What's Earth's response going to be this time, Admiral?" Jake asked. Another strongly worded letter to the Galactic Council? More economic sanctions that they ignore? Lisa's face went hard. "President Hayes is calling an emergency meeting. Every human world, every colony, every outpost. We're done playing by their rules." The transmission ended, and Jake stared at the wreckage floating past his ship. The Empire treated humans like bugs to be stepped on whenever it felt convenient. They took human technology, human food, human medicine, and gave nothing back except threats and death. Back on Earth, President Charles Hayes sat in the war room beneath the Capitol. Representatives from every human settlement in known space appeared as holograms around the massive table. The mood was ugly and getting worse by the minute. Senator Mary Collins from Alpha Centauri spoke first. Her colony had lost 2 transport ships last week to Empire customs inspections that ended in explosions. "How many more of our people have to die before we fight back? They treat us like animals in a zoo, only useful when they need something from us." Governor Pete Williams from the mining world of Kepler spoke next. "They took half our platinum shipment yesterday. Said it was payment for protection services we never asked for. My people are working 16-hour shifts just to meet the quotas. They force on us." Dr. William Foster stood up from his seat near the president. The old scientist had been studying Empire technology for 30 years, ever since first contact. What he had learned would shock everyone in the room. "I need to tell you all something that will change how you see this war," Foster began. "We've been analyzing every piece of Empire tech we could get our hands on. Their weapons, their ships, their computers. The results are not what anyone expected." Foster activated a holographic display showing side-by-side comparisons of human and Empire technology. The numbers made several delegates gasp in surprise. "Their ships are bigger than ours, yes, but our weapons are twice as accurate and 3 times more efficient. Their shields can take more punishment, but our reactors produce 40% more power per unit of fuel. In every category that matters for actual fighting, we're ahead of them." The room erupted in shocked conversations. For decades, humans had assumed the Empire's massive fleets meant they were technologically superior. The truth was the opposite. The Empire won through numbers and fear, not better science. "Are you saying we could actually beat them in a fight?" asked Colonel Danny Foster from the Border Worlds. "I'm saying we've been beaten by bullies who convinced us they were stronger than they really are," the doctor replied. "They have more ships, but each of our ships is worth 3 of theirs in actual combat. President Hayes stood up, and the room went quiet. The man had aged 10 years in the past month, watching Empire attacks kill thousands of his people. His voice was steady, but everyone could hear the steel underneath. Ladies and gentlemen, I've made a decision that will change everything. Effective immediately, Earth is closing its borders to all Empire ships, citizens, and trade. No Empire vessel enters human space for any reason. No Empire citizen sets foot on any human world. No Empire goods cross our boundaries. The delegates started talking at once, some excited, others terrified. No one had ever defied the Empire so directly before. Species that tried usually ended up as slaves or corpses. But Mr. President, Senator Collins said, they'll declare war on us. Their fleet is 10 times the size of ours. Let them come, Hayes replied. Dr. Foster's research shows we can hurt them badly if we're smart about it. But more than that, we're going to make sure every species in the galaxy knows exactly why we're fighting. The president activated another display, this one showing intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Captain Susan Baker's reconnaissance team had been busy documenting Empire crimes for months. The Empire doesn't just oppress us. They've enslaved dozens of species across the galaxy. The reptilian saurians are forced to work in poison mines while their children are taken as students and never returned. The ocean dwellers on Ross 128b have had their seas poisoned to force them into labor camps. More images flashed across the screen. Entire species reduced to slavery, their homeworld strip-mined, their cultures destroyed. The Empire presented itself as the galaxy's protector, keeping peace between younger species. The reality was a protection racket that had conquered half of known space. We're going to broadcast the truth to every inhabited system in the galaxy, Hayes continued. Every species will learn what the Empire really is and what they've done to countless worlds. Some of them might even join us. The meeting lasted 6 more hours as they planned humanity's first real act of defiance. When it ended, every human world had received the same orders. Close the borders. Prepare for war. Tell the truth. 3 days later, High Admiral Vextar of the Empire Fleet arrived at the edge of human space, expecting the usual tribute and groveling. Instead, he found a wall of human warships and a simple message broadcast on all frequencies. Turn around. You are not welcome here. Earth has closed its gates to the Zephyrian Empire. Leave our space immediately, or face the consequences. The Empire had never been told no by a younger species. They were about to learn that humans had been waiting their whole lives to say that word. Captain Susan Baker guided the UES Defiance through the asteroid field on the edge of Kepler 442b. Her ship was humanity's most advanced scout vessel, built for staying hidden and gathering information. The mission President Hayes had given her was simple but deadly dangerous. Document every Empire crime across the galaxy and bring back proof. What she found made her sick to her stomach. The reptilian saurians who lived on Kepler 442b had once been a proud warrior race with cities that reached toward the stars. Now they crawled through toxic mine shafts, digging rare metals for their Empire masters. The air was so poisoned that most saurians died before age 30. Lieutenant Paul Johnson worked at the communications station, recording everything they saw. The young officer had volunteered for this mission to avenge his brother, killed in an Empire raid 6 months ago. His hands shook as he filmed saurian children being loaded onto Empire transports. Captain, those kids can't be more than 10 years. Old, Paul said. The Empire documentation says they're being taken for cultural exchange programs. But look at the parents crying and begging. Susan watched through the ship's telescopes as families were torn apart. The Empire called it education, but everyone knew the truth. Those children would become servants in Empire households. their memories wiped, their identities destroyed. The ones who survived would never see their homes again. Keep recording. Paul, the galaxy needs to see what these monsters really do. The Defiance moved carefully through the outer system, documenting everything. Empire Guard ships patrolled constantly, but Susan's crew knew how to stay invisible. They had spent weeks learning Empire patrol patterns and weaknesses. Dr. Karen White analyzed the data they collected. The ship's science officer had studied alien cultures her whole life, but nothing had prepared her for this level of systematic cruelty. Captain, this isn't random violence. It's a carefully planned program to break these people's spirits and turn them into perfect slaves. They jumped to Ross 128b next, home to the aquatic Cetians. The ocean world had once been a paradise of blue seas and floating cities. Now the water was brown with industrial waste. Empire factories dumped poison into the seas, while Cetian workers were forced to process the chemicals that were killing their own world. The few Cetians still alive lived in labor camps on artificial islands. Their gills were damaged from the toxic water, forcing them to work in the land-based factories that were destroying their planet. Many could barely breathe in the poisoned air, but the Empire Guards shot anyone who stopped working. "This is genocide," whispered Ensign Tim Brooks from the sensor station. "They're not just enslaving these people, they're slowly killing their entire species." Susan's jaw tightened as she watched Empire overseers whip Cetians who moved too slowly. These were once scientists and artists, beings who had created underwater symphonies and living coral sculptures. Now they were treated worse than animals. The intelligence gathering took 2 months as they visited system after system. Everywhere they went, the pattern was the same. The Empire would arrive claiming to offer protection from pirates or hostile neighbors. Then came economic pressure and impossible taxes. Finally, military occupation and systematic slavery. On Proxima Centauri C, the insectoid mantids were forced to produce weapons in underground factories. Their compound eyes had adapted to darkness over millions of years, but the Empire made them work under blazing lights that caused constant pain and blindness. The plant-like Verdans on Wolf 1061C had their root systems cut and replanted in Empire agricultural facilities. They were literally being farmed like crops, their conscious minds trapped in bodies that could not move or escape. System after system, species after species. 17 different races reduced to slavery by Empire expansion. The methods were always identical. Economic pressure, military threats, and complete subjugation. Paul worked 18-hour shifts compiling the evidence. Every document, every video recording, every piece of proof that showed the Empire's true nature. His brother had died, believing humans were alone in fighting the Empire. Now Paul knew the truth was much worse. "Captain, we have documentation of crimes against 43 billion sentient beings across 17 star systems," Paul reported. "This isn't an empire. It's a machine built to consume entire civilizations." Meanwhile, back in human space, Ambassador Helen Wright prepared for the most important diplomatic mission in galactic history. The Andromedan Council had remained neutral for over 1,000 years, refusing to take sides in any galactic conflict. But Helen carried evidence that might change their minds. The Andromedans were the oldest known species in the galaxy, tall and graceful with blue skin and silver eyes that seemed to look right through you. Their homeworld was a place of crystal spires and floating gardens, where violence had been unknown for millennia. Elder Thane met Helen in the council chambers, a vast hall carved from a single massive crystal. The ancient being had lived for over 800 years and had seen the rise and fall of dozens of galactic powers. Nothing surprised him anymore, or so he thought. "Ambassador Wright, the Council appreciates Earth's request for a hearing, but we do not involve ourselves in the conflicts of younger species. Thane said in his musical voice. Helen activated her portable display and began showing the evidence Susan's team had gathered. Video after video of Empire atrocities, documentation of systematic genocide, proof of slavery on a galactic scale. Elder Thane's silver eyes widened as he watched. Honorable Elder, the Empire has been using your neutrality as cover for their crimes, Helen said. They tell other species that the Andromedans approve of their actions through silence. Your non-interference policy has become their shield. For the first time in centuries, Elder Thane looked genuinely shocked. The Andromedans had always assumed the Empire was merely aggressive, not actively evil. The evidence Helen presented showed organized cruelty beyond anything they had imagined. This changes everything, Thane whispered. We thought we were maintaining peace through neutrality. Instead, we have been enabling monsters. Back on Earth, Chief Engineer Ryan Adams worked around the clock on Project Lighthouse. The massive communication array was humanity's most ambitious construction project, a network of transmitters that could broadcast to every inhabited system simultaneously. We get one shot at this, Ryan told his team as they calibrated the final components. When we flip this switch, every species in the galaxy will receive our message at the same time. The Empire won't be able to stop it or spin it. The array was hidden on the dark side of Luna, protected by the most advanced defensive systems humanity could build. When activated, it would punch through every form of electronic interference the Empire might use. High Admiral Vextar noticed. Something was wrong when his diplomatic mission reached the edge of human space. Instead of the usual fearful welcome, he found a wall of human warships in perfect formation. Their weapons were powered, but not yet aimed at his fleet. The reptilian commander had never been refused entry to any system in his 40-year career. Lesser species simply did not say no to the Zephyrian Empire. A concept was unthinkable. His flagship, the Conquest of Stars, was the size of a small city and carried enough firepower to sterilize a planet. Surely these humans would see reason when faced with such overwhelming force. Instead, Captain Danny Foster's voice came across all frequencies with a message that would echo through galactic history. High Admiral Vextar, you are not welcome. In human space, turn your ships around and leave immediately. Earth has closed its borders to the Zephyrian Empire and all its representatives. For the first time in his long career, Vextar had been told no by a species the Empire considered inferior. The humiliation burned like acid in his throat. These mammals would learn the price of defying their betters. High Admiral Vextar stared at the human fleet blocking his path and felt something he had not experienced in decades. Confusion. In 40 years of commanding Empire forces, no species had ever refused him entry to their space. The very idea was impossible to his reptilian mind. His flagship Conquest of Stars was 3 times larger than the biggest human vessel facing him. Its weapons could crack a moon in half, and its shields had never been breached in battle. Behind him stretched a battle group of 20 Empire destroyers, each one a terror that could reduce cities to ash dot, yet these humans sat in their smaller ships and told him no. Vextar opened a direct communication link to Emperor Zelneth on the Empire homeworld. The ancient ruler appeared on the main screen, his scarred face twisted with rage at the news of human defiance. Impossible, the Emperor hissed through razor-sharp teeth. These mammals dare to refuse the Empire? They exist only because we allow it. Destroy their border station immediately. Make an example that will remind every species in the galaxy of their proper place. The order was clear, and Vextar smiled as he gave his fleet the signal to attack. Outpost Gamma sat at the edge of human space like a metal island in the void. Its commander, Captain Danny Foster, had maybe 50 crew members and a handful of offensive weapons. This would be over in minutes. But when the Empire ships opened fire, something unexpected happened. The human station's shields flared to life with an intensity that made Vexstar sensor officers gasp. The Empire weapons struck the barrier and simply disappeared, their energy absorbed and redirected into space. Impossible, Vexstar growled. Our weapons can destroy anything. What technology are they using? Captain Foster's voice came across all frequencies, calm and steady despite facing overwhelming odds. High Admiral, you have opened fire on a peaceful station in human space. This constitutes an act of war. We will defend ourselves accordingly. The human station's weapons came online, and Vexstar saw something that made his blood run cold. Focused plasma beams lanced out from Outpost Gamma with surgical precision, striking the Empire ships at their weakest points. 2 destroyers lost their main engines in the first salvo, dead in space and helpless. How are they cutting through our armor so easily? Vexstar demanded of his weapons officer. Sir, their beams are incredibly focused. Instead of spreading damage across our hull, they're cutting right through specific points. Our defenses weren't designed for precision attacks like this. More human ships began arriving as the battle continued. Captain Danny Foster's small garrison was reinforced by patrol vessels from deeper in human space. Each new arrival brought weapons that seemed designed specifically to exploit Empire weaknesses. Commander Ashley Brooks watched the engagement from the bridge of the UES Constitution as her ship moved to support Outpost Gamma. The intelligence reports from Dr. Foster had been correct. Empire technology was brute force applied without elegance or efficiency. Their ships are built like fortresses, Ashley observed as she watched plasma beams carve through Empire armor. Strong against area attacks, but vulnerable to concentrated fire. They never developed defenses against precision weapons because they never needed to. The battle lasted 6 hours before Vexstar finally ordered a retreat. His 20-ship battle group limped away from human space with 8 vessels completely destroyed and the rest heavily damaged. Not a single human ship had been lost, though Outpost Gamma would need extensive repairs. The engagement was broadcast live across human space, and the reaction was electric. Citizens who had lived in fear of the Empire for decades watched their forces carve through supposedly superior technology. The humans were not only holding their ground, they were winning. On Earth, Dr. Janet Miller led a team of historians in analyzing centuries of Empire expansion data. What they discovered confirmed humanity's growing suspicions about their galactic oppressors. The Empire hasn't developed any genuinely new technology in over 200 years, Dr. Miller reported to President Hayes. Every advance they've made has been stolen from conquered species or adapted from existing designs. They're technologically stagnant. The revelation explained everything. The Empire conquered through numbers and intimidation, never through innovation. They had grown comfortable ruling through fear and had stopped pushing the boundaries of science and engineering. President Hayes authorized the next phase of Earth's plan. Every human colony, outpost, and trading station received identical orders, broadcast on secure channels. Complete economic embargo of all Empire goods, citizens, and vessels. Any species willing to trade with humanity would receive full protection from Empire retaliation. The economic impact was immediate and devastating. The Empire's economy had become dependent on human innovation over the decades of contact. Medical, equipment, computer systems, agricultural tools, manufacturing processes, all of it flowing from human worlds to Empire space. Without access to human technology, Empire expansion ground to a halt. Their industrial capacity, designed around human-built machinery, began breaking down. Replacement parts became impossible to obtain. Entire sectors of their economy started collapsing. Trade routes that had carried goods for decades suddenly went silent. Empire worlds that had grown used to human medical supplies found themselves facing shortages that their own outdated. Technology could not replace. Emperor Zelmuth summoned his economic advisors, and the news was worse than he had imagined. Honorable Emperor, the human embargo has cut our industrial output by 60%, reported Minister Kothver. Our shipyards cannot build new vessels without human manufacturing equipment. Our medical facilities are running out of supplies. The Emperor's rage shook the throne room. These insects dare to wage economic war against the Empire? We will respond with actual war. Summon the Grand Fleet. The Grand Fleet was the Empire's ultimate weapon, a collection of over 3,000 ships that had never been assembled in one place before. Dreadnoughts the size of cities, cruisers that could level continents, fighters that swarmed like deadly insects across space. It would take months to gather such a massive force, but when it moved against human space, nothing would survive. The Emperor would personally lead the fleet to ensure these mammals learned their place in the galactic order. News of the Grand Fleet's mobilization spread quickly through the galaxy's intelligence networks. Species that had secretly hoped humans might succeed now watched in terror as the Empire prepared for total war. But something else was happening across the galaxy that the Empire had not expected. On dozens of worlds, the oppressed species that Captain Susan Baker had documented began receiving mysterious transmissions from human space. The Saurians in their toxic minds learned that other species were fighting back. The Cetians in their poisoned oceans heard that rebellion was possible. The plant-like Verdans discovered they were not alone in their suffering. Ambassador Helen Wright's diplomatic mission to the Andromedan Council had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. Elder Thane announced that the 1,000-year policy of neutrality was officially ended. The evidence presented by humanity reveals crimes that cannot be ignored, Thane declared before the assembled council. The Andromedan people formally recognize Earth's right to defend itself and call upon all free species to resist Empire tyranny. The declaration sent shock waves through galactic civilization. If the ancient and respected Andromedans were taking sides, other species began reconsidering their own positions. On the industrial world of Kepler 442b, Saurian resistance fighters began sabotaging Empire mining equipment. The Cetians on Ross 128b started coordinating attacks on the factories poisoning their oceans. A dozen other species declared independence and requested human protection. Captain Susan Baker found herself commanding an unlikely fleet of human ships, alongside vessels from 6 different alien species. Her mixed task force began hitting Empire supply lines while the main fleets prepared for the coming storm. Never thought I'd be fighting alongside people I can't even pronounce the names of, joked Lieutenant Paul Johnson as he worked with a Saurian communications officer. Just remember they're fighting for the same thing we are, Susan replied. The right to exist without some bully telling them how to live. The Empire had spent centuries convincing the galaxy that resistance was impossible. Humanity's example was proving them wrong. Species that had lived as slaves for generations were remembering what freedom felt like. Emperor Zelmuth received reports of uprisings across his territory, and his rage grew cold and calculating. These rebellions were being coordinated from Earth. The source of the cancer had to be cut out completely. Gather every ship, every weapon, every soldier, he commanded his war council. We will end this human infection once and for all. When we finish with their homeworld, no species will ever again dare to defy the Empire. A stage was set for the largest military confrontation in galactic history. Humanity had kicked the hornet's nest, and now the hornets were coming in force. A grand fleet was a nightmare made real. Over 3,000 ships stretched across space in formation after formation of death and destruction. Dreadnoughts the size of Manhattan floated alongside carriers that held 10,000 fighters each. The Empire had never assembled this much military power in one place before. Emperor Zelnoth stood on the bridge of his flagship Heart of Empire and felt satisfaction flow through his ancient bones. The vessel was 5 miles long and carried enough firepower to turn Earth into a burning cinder. Behind him stretched the accumulated might of 1,000 conquered worlds. These mammals will learn what happens when lesser species challenge their betters. The Emperor told his assembled war council, "We will burn their whole world to ash and sell the survivors as slaves." Every species in the galaxy will remember this lesson for the next 1,000 years. Admiral Lisa Kane watched the enemy fleet approach from her command center on Fortress Luna. Earth's entire military consisted of barely 400 ships against the Empire's 3,000. By every measure of conventional warfare, humanity was about to be wiped from existence. But humans had never been conventional. "All stations report ready for Operation Thunderstrike," announced Colonel Steve Martinez from the Mars Defense Grid. "Orbital platforms charged, stealth squadrons in position, civilian evacuation complete. Time to show these bullies what David did to Goliath." The first engagement happened at Wolf 359, where Captain Nicole Thompson's task force waited to meet. The Empire's advance guard. Her 50 ships faced 300 Empire vessels in what should have been a one-sided massacre. Instead, the humans demonstrated why bigger was not always better. "Remember the plan," Thompson broadcast to her fleet. "We're not here to win a slugging match. We're here to cut off their head and watch the body die." The Empire advance guard moved in the traditional formation they had used for centuries. A massive wedge of heavy ships at the front, followed by cruisers and destroyers in support roles. It looked impressive and had worked against every enemy they had ever faced. But humans fought differently. Thompson's ships scattered the moment the Empire fleet came within weapons range. Instead of meeting them head-on, the human vessels split into small groups that attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. Each group targeted a specific Empire command ship with surgical precision. "Focus all fire on their flagship," Thompson ordered as her squadron dove toward the Empire formation. "Cut through their command structure, and the rest will fall apart like dominoes." The Empire relied on centralized command more than any other military force in galactic history. Every ship waited for orders from above instead of thinking for themselves. It was efficient when everything went according to plan, but became a fatal weakness when the plan fell apart. Thompson's plasma cannons carved through the Empire flagship's armor like it was made of paper. The massive dreadnought split in half, taking the advance guard's commanding admiral and his entire staff with it. Suddenly, 300 ships had no one giving them orders. Individual Empire captains tried to take command, but they had no experience making independent decisions. Some ships charged forward without support, others retreated without orders, and many simply sat in space, waiting for someone to tell them what to do. The human task force moved through the confused Empire ships like sharks through a school of fish. 6 hours later, the advance guard was in full retreat with 60 ships destroyed, and most of the rest too damaged to fight. Captain Thompson had lost exactly 7 vessels. The victory sent shockwaves through both fleets. Empire commanders who had never known defeat suddenly faced the possibility that their massive numerical advantage might not be enough. Human crews who had lived in fear of the Empire realized their enemy could bleed, but the main fleet was still coming, and Earth needed every ally it could find. Ambassador Helen Wright's diplomatic mission had opened doors, but now those doors needed to be walked through by people willing to fight. Captain Susan Baker commanded a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human destroyers flew alongside. Saurian mining ships converted to carry weapons. Seacian submarines had been modified for space combat and moved through the void like deadly whales. Andromedan crystal ships sang with harmonics that disrupted Empire communications. "Never thought I'd see the day when humans and aliens fought side by side," commented Lieutenant Paul Johnson as he coordinated with a manted weapons officer whose compound eyes could track 50 targets simultaneously. "We're not aliens to each other anymore," Susan replied. "We're all just people who refuse to kneel to bullies." Her mixed fleet had one mission: harass Empire supply lines and prevent them from resupplying during the coming battle. Every fuel depot destroyed, every ammunition convoy captured, every communication relay knocked out would weaken the Grand Fleet when it finally reached Earth. The Empire had grown used to fighting enemies who would meet them in straight-up battles. They had no experience dealing with guerrilla tactics spread across multiple star systems. Susan's forces struck at targets throughout Empire space and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. On Earth itself, President Hayes addressed this planet in a speech that would be remembered until the end of human civilization. The man stood in the same room where the United Nations had first met centuries ago, surrounded by flags from every human world. "My fellow humans, we face the greatest challenge in our species' history," Hayes began. "An empire built on slavery and oppression has decided that our desire for freedom makes us too dangerous to live. They come with ships that blot out the stars and weapons that can crack planets." The president paused and looked directly into the camera, his eyes reflecting a determination that burned like steel. "But we are not the same species that first reached for the stars 300 years ago. We have learned to build ships that dance between the raindrops. We have made allies of people we once thought were monsters. We have proven that courage and intelligence can triumph over brute force and fear." The speech was broadcast not just to human worlds, but across the entire galaxy through Project Lighthouse. Billions of enslaved beings heard a human leader speak words they had never dared to hope someone would say. "We did not ask for this war, but we will not run from it. Humanity stands today not just for ourselves, but for every being in this galaxy who believes that freedom is worth fighting for. Today, we make our stand, and tomorrow we will still be free." The Emperor's response came 12 hours later as the Grand Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. His message was broadcast on every frequency, meant to terrify Earth into surrender. "Humans of the Sol system, you have one chance to avoid complete annihilation. Surrender your government, disarm your fleets, and submit to Empire rule. Refuse, and every man, woman, and child on your worlds will die screaming." President Hayes' reply was broadcast immediately and reached every corner of human space. "Emperor Zelmuth, we have heard your offer, and our answer is the same as it has always been. No, come and take our freedom if you think you can." The die was cast. The largest fleet in galactic history faced the most determined defenders the universe had ever seen. Earth's orbital defenses came online as Admiral Kane prepared to show the Empire what happened when you cornered a species that had climbed to the top of the food chain on a world where everything wanted to kill them. Colonel Amy Peterson checked the power levels on the orbital defense platforms one final time. The massive railguns had been disguised as communication satellites for 20 years, waiting for this moment. Each platform could accelerate a tungsten slug to 30% of light speed. "Platforms charged and ready, Admiral," Peterson reported. "Target locks established on their command ships. Just give the word." In the depths of space, 3,000 Empire ships moved toward Earth like a tide of death. But tides could be turned by those who knew the currents, and humans had been studying the flow of battle since they first picked up sticks and stones to defend their caves. The Battle of Sol was about to begin. The Battle of Sol began at exactly 0800 Earth time, when Emperor Zelmuth gave the order that would change galactic history forever. 3,000 Empire ships moved toward Earth like a wall of death, their weapons charging for what should have been the easiest victory in the Empire's long history of conquest. Admiral Lisa Kane watched from Fortress Luna as the enemy fleet approached. Her 400 ships looked like toys compared to the massive dreadnoughts bearing down on them, but she had learned something important over the past months. Size meant nothing if you could not hit your target. All units execute operation. Swarm, Kane broadcast to her fleet. Remember what we learned at Wolf 359. They fight like a glacier, slow and predictable. We fight like lightning. The human fleet scattered the moment the Empire ships came into weapons range. Instead of forming a battle line, like every other species in galactic history, the human vessels split into groups of 5 or 6 ships each. Each group had one target and one mission: kill an Empire command ship and disappear. Emperor Zelmath watched from his flagship Heart of Empire as the humans fled in all directions. The reptilian ruler smiled, showing rows of razor-sharp teeth. Cowards, they run from battle like the weak mammals they are. All ships pursue and destroy. But the humans were not running away. They were running toward specific targets. Captain Jake Morrison led Squadron 7 in a diving attack on the Empire's left flank. His 6 ships moved like dancers, weaving between the massive Empire vessels, while their weapons carved precise holes in armor that had never been breached before. Target their reactor feeds, Morrison ordered as his ships dove toward the Empire, dreadnought the size of a city. Cut their power, and they become floating scrap metal. The Empire ship tried to bring its main guns to bear, but Jake's squadron was too small and too fast. The massive weapons designed to destroy other capital ships could not track targets moving at such speed and in such unpredictable patterns. Morrison's plasma cannons found their mark, and the dreadnought went dark as its reactors shut down automatically. To prevent an explosion, 5 miles of the most advanced warship the Empire had ever built became nothing more than a drifting hulk in 30 seconds. The pattern repeated across the battle zone as human squadrons struck at Empire vessels with surgical precision. Each attack targeted a specific weakness that Dr. Foster's research had identified years ago. Power systems, command centers, communication arrays, weapon control nodes. Emperor Zelmath realized something was terribly wrong when his fleet's coordination began breaking down. Ship after ship reported losing contact with command or suffering critical system failures. The humans were not fighting a battle. They were performing surgery on his fleet. Impossible, the Emperor hissed as another of his dreadnoughts went silent. These insects cannot be defeating the Grand Fleet. We have overwhelming superiority in every category. But they did not have superiority in the categories that actually mattered. The Empire had built their military around brute force and intimidation. Humans had built theirs around speed, precision, and thinking 3 steps ahead of the enemy. Captain Nicole Thompson's task force demonstrated this perfectly when they encountered the Empire's center formation. Instead of attacking the biggest ships, she targeted the communication vessels that coordinated the entire group. Take out their command and control, Thompson ordered. Make them fight as individuals instead of as a fleet. Her weapons found their targets, and suddenly 50 Empire ships had no way to talk to each other. Captains who had never made an independent tactical decision in their lives found themselves completely isolated in the middle of a battle they did not understand. Some tried to follow their last orders and charged forward into empty space. Others attempted to retreat and crashed into their own ships. Many simply stopped moving and waited for orders that would never come. The turning point came when Colonel Amy Peterson revealed humanity's secret weapon, the orbital defense platforms that had masqueraded as communication satellites for 20 years suddenly came online with enough power to light up every sensor in the solar system. All platforms report ready, Peterson announced from her command center buried deep beneath Luna's surface. Target locks established on their flagship. Firing sequence initiated. The platforms were not weapons in any traditional sense. They were railguns the size of skyscrapers, capable of accelerating projectiles to 30% of light speed. Each tungsten slug carried more kinetic energy than a nuclear bomb. The first salvo from the defense grid crossed the distance to the Empire fleet in less than 2 seconds. The projectiles were too small for most sensors to track, and moving too fast for any defense system to intercept. Emperor Zelmuth was giving orders to his fleet commanders when the tungsten slug hit his flagship. The heart of Empire, supposedly the most heavily armored vessel in galactic history, split completely in half. The forward section tumbled away into space, while the rear exploded in a ball of plasma that could be seen from Earth. The Emperor died instantly along with most of his senior command staff. The Empire's rigid hierarchy collapsed without central leadership, and individual ship captains found themselves commanding vessels they had no idea how to use effectively. More slugs from the defense platforms tore through the Empire fleet like bullets through paper. Dreadnoughts that had terrorized 100 worlds were reduced to scrap metal by projectiles no bigger than telephone poles. The mathematics of kinetic energy made armor thickness irrelevant. "Their flagship is destroyed," reported Captain Morrison as he watched the heart of Empire break apart. "Repeat, the Emperor is dead. Empire fleet is in complete disarray." But Admiral Kane was not finished. She activated Project Lighthouse and broadcast the battle live to every inhabited system in the galaxy. Billions of beings who had lived in fear of the Empire for centuries watched in amazement as human forces systematically dismantled the Grand Fleet. "This is Admiral Lisa Kane of the Terran Defense Force," she announced to the galaxy. "You are watching the end of an empire built on fear and slavery. Today, free beings everywhere can see that bullies can be beaten when good people stand together." The broadcast had immediate effects across Empire space. On Kepler 442b, Saurian workers threw down their mining tools and overpowered their guards. The Cetians on Ross 128b seized control of the factories that had been poisoning their oceans. Species that had been enslaved for generations suddenly remembered what it felt like to be free. Empire commanders who had watched their Emperor die tried to maintain order, but their authority died with him. Some captains attempted to continue fighting, but found themselves facing not just human ships, but vessels from a dozen different species that had joined the battle. Captain Susan Baker led the multi-species fleet in a coordinated attack on the Empire's remaining heavy ships. Saurian-converted mining vessels used their industrial equipment to tear apart Empire armor, while Cetian ships moved through the battle like predators hunting in deep water. "All Empire vessels, this is Captain Susan Baker of the Terran Defense Force," she broadcast on all frequencies. "Your Emperor is dead, your fleet is broken, and your Empire is finished. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to the laws of war. Continue fighting, and you will be destroyed." Most Empire captains chose surrender over annihilation. Those who kept fighting found themselves outnumbered and outgunned by forces they had never imagined could work together. The Battle of Seoul officially ended 18 hours after it began, when the last Empire ship either surrendered or fled toward the outer system. Of the 3,000 vessels that had approached Earth in the morning, fewer than 400 remained operational by nightfall. President Hayes addressed the galaxy once more as rescue ships moved to collect survivors from both sides. "The age of Empire tyranny ends today. From this moment forward, every system, every world, every species has the right to exist without fear of oppression or conquest." 6 months later, Ambassador Helen Wright stood before the newly formed Galactic Federation in a hall built from the wreckage of Empire ships. Representatives from 47 different species had gathered to create something the galaxy had never seen: a government based on equality instead of conquest. We gather not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals seeking a better future, Helen announced to the assembled delegates. A human concept of democracy offers us something we never thought possible: peace with justice instead of peace. Through fear. Elder Thane of the Andromedans spoke for many species when he observed, "Humanity has given us more than victory over our oppressors. They have shown us that cooperation is stronger than competition, that freedom's more powerful than force." Admiral Lisa Kane, now commanding the Federation Defense Force, watched human and alien crews working together aboard ships designed by multiple species. The technology that emerged from this cooperation was beyond anything any single race could have created alone. "We did not just win a war," Kane told Captain Morrison as they observed joint training exercises in the asteroid belt. "We proved that different does not mean enemy. We showed the galaxy that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker." The former Empire territories were divided among their original I,